Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Mentor with the Chattanooga Public Library. I work as the recording studio instructor and the manager at the downtown locations recording studio. I'm going to continue my series by talking about albums where I've found beneficial recording and mixing techniques in them and share them with you, and you can apply them in the studio once we open back up. And that being said, this is a record I'm going to talk about today. It's Jimi Hendrix's 1971 album, Cry of Love. So this actually came out the year after he died, and it was put together by the engineer Eddie Cramer from songs that they were pretty much complete from. They just needed to be mixed, but they were pretty much finished from the recording sessions from his double album that they were working on. That being said, Eddie Cramer is one of the stars of the show here. He engineered and produced this record and had been working with Hendrix for a few years. So I think that they were really, hitting their stride at this point. But we have some of his plugins in the studio. I use them. They're great. You can definitely experiment with those. It's the Eddie Cramer, series within the Waves company of plugins. But anyway, so this record is really cool to me. It's got a kind of combination of the bands that Hendrix was playing with before that. It's got Mitch Mitchell, who played drums with The Experience from Hendrix's first three records, and then also has Billy Cox on bass from the band of Gypsies. So you have this really cool soul influence, rock influence, and then, of course, the blues influence as well. And one thing that struck me, when I was younger, when I first heard this record, was how big it sounded. And I'm like, they're a three-piece. How do they sound so big? Well, part of it is because of Hendrix being a master composer of guitar parts and, layering guitar parts and having guitar parts play different, add different things to the songs. So what they would do is have a basic tracking session with Hendrix playing guitar, Billy Cox playing bass, and Mitch Mitchell playing drums, and then they would record those three, and Hendrix might, do a vocal just so they knew where they were at in the songs, and then they wouldn't use that. They'd go back and they'd do a new vocal line, but he'd probably play a rhythm guitar part, something where they knew the changes and everything, but then Hendrix would go back in and create new guitar parts and play off of himself and then have solos and just be experimental in the studio. And Eddie Cramer was great at bringing that to life. He was sort of like the interpreter. So if Jimmy had some abstract idea, he could tell Eddie Cramer, and then Eddie Cramer was able to basically make that happen. So on this record, you hear a lot of great guitar parts all over the map, and Hendrix was a master of coming up with new tones and adding character to songs where you remember certain songs because of the guitar tones he was using on them. It wasn't just the same guitar tone the whole album. He would change his guitar setting, his amp settings, he would use different effects. And these effects, that brings me to kind of the next point that helped it sound so large, big, whatever you want to call it, and then also unique, is like on a song like Drifting, for instance, he's using what sounds like a univibe pedal, which is kind of like a chorus pedal, and it adds this sort of watery sound. And then he didn't really use a fuzz pedal much on this record that I heard, but he might use an octave pedal where it sounds like two guitars are playing the same part at the same time, but really what it is it's doubling that guitar part an octave up, and in some cases an octave down. And then he's using a wah pedal, which is kind of like if you could imagine like your frequency range for the guitar, and it's basically like a notch, so it's like actually probably like this, so it's cutting, and then you use your foot to control the sweep of the filter. So that's what a wah pedal is doing, and you can kind of makes almost like a talking sound a little bit. If you listen to Straight Ahead, for instance, he's all over the place using a wah pedal on that one and a couple other songs. But other than those three, there's not really any other there's a piano on Freedom, I believe, that kind of adds to the large or the hugeness of this record. There's always something going on, and they're not, to me, it's not distracting parts. It's almost like they're playing off of each other, and his vocal is up front, but this is definitely a guitar album, in my opinion. There's panning, so a guitar solo might be going almost around your head, as Eddie Cramer is panning it from side to side in a very musical way. So that's another cool thing that kind of keeps the listener interested. And then one thing that I kind of attribute to Hendrix is this idea of, it's almost like guitar movements, not movement physically, but if you think of classical music where there's different parts of a larger composition, Hendrix is taking a guitar part and breaking it down into different sections and using different tones on each one. So it's not just he's using this tone on this song or this tone on another song and they're contrasting. He's contrasting a whole guitar passage 3 times, 4 times with different guitar tones, and it flows together, seamlessly. It's really cool. Nightbird is a good example of that one. He also does some backwards guitar, and I'm not talking about how he plays the guitar, a right-handed guitar, left-handed, and restrung, like actual reverse guitar, and they did this by reversing the tape. You can do this now in your modern systems on your computer, and I'll show you that. I'll do that for the next episode. I'll show you how to do a reverse guitar solo the old school way. Let's see, what else can we talk about here? There's some good percussion in here that helps to fill out the rhythm. There's a really cool song called My Friend that uses a lot of sound effects, so it sounds like he's playing in like an old blues bar, and there's people talking and bottles are being broken and stuff, and it's just kind of, you get this idea that here's this guy that nobody's really paying attention to, and he's singing about his only friend is his shadow. So I thought that was a really cool way to incorporate sound effects into a song. And that's actually, I believe that's the oldest song. They recorded that years before this. And I'm not sure if Hendrix would have included it on his double album. Nobody really knows. But it was definitely from the Experience era. So I'm just glad that Eddie Cramer did include it, because I think it's a great song, and I think it actually does flow with the record. Other than that, there's not much else, except I do want to kind of touch on the drums a little bit, because the drums of this era were treated much differently than drums now. So think back to the 2001 video I did, the Dre video, where the drums are way up front and they're like smacking you in the face. You're not going to get that from this record. They're more subdued. They're obviously rhythmic and they serve their purpose there, but it's not like modern rock drums are mixed, which I think are probably influenced quite a bit by hip hop. But they're very natural sounding. Engineers didn't use a lot of mics on drums in 1970, 1969. So if you want to make your song sound retro like this, just limit yourself to the amount of mics that you're putting on drums. But I think other than that, I believe, I've touched all the points on this great record. You can definitely get some Hendrix music through Hoopla. We also have a DVD called Hear My Train A-Comin' that you can borrow from the library. And then there's a couple books as well that you can get via Hoopla through your library card. But I believe that's all. So, Cry of Love. Check it out. It's a great record. And then check out his other stuff as well. But I appreciate you watching, and take care, everybody. All right.